Hello everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Jesse Richard, and on behalf of Everbridge, I'm excited to present this webinar, Avoiding Data Center Disasters. During the event, our two speakers will discuss the complexities and risks associated with data centers, the main causes of downtime, warning signs, as well as quick fixes, interventions, and mitigation tips to avoid or respond to a data center disaster. After the presentation, we'll have a short Q&A with the speakers. And as a reminder, for those who haven't joined in before, the slides as well as the recording will be sent out early next week to all the participants today. And additionally, you can download the slides from the handouts panel in GoToWebinar. We encourage everyone to participate and ask questions in real time during the webinar, and you can submit your questions by typing in the questions widget and submitting to all panelists. We will also be live tweeting and responding to questions on Twitter if you want to follow us at IT Alerting or using the hashtag ITAWebinar. And now, I would like to introduce you to our two speakers. First up, we have Jim Nelson, who is the president of Business Continuity Services, Inc., a consulting firm specializing in providing resiliency, business continuity, IT disaster recovery, risk management, technology, and crisis management consulting. Jim works globally and across many business sectors. Jim is also the founder and serves as chairman of the board of directors for the International Consortium for Organizational Resilience, the ICOR, a nonprofit education organization in the disciplines that support organizational resilience, including critical environments, education, and certification. After Jim, we'll hear from Vincent Jeffrey, who is the Director of Product here at Everbridge, with a focus on IT alerting, communications, and IoT. He has over 14 years of experience in the information technology business, designing, promoting, and selling enterprise IT operations management solutions, including critical communications, application performance management, and IT process and workload automation. And without further ado, I would like to pass it over to Jim.
Well, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Just administrative check. Can you see the screen okay?
Looking good on our end, Jim.
Very good. What we're going to do first off is we're going to do a couple of polls in the early portion where we're going to ask you some high-level questions, and then that'll give the attendees a chance to respond to those polls. Then during, maybe a few minutes later, then we'll take a look and see what the responses are from the group. So again, thank you for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to work with you. Let me dispel a myth. I've had the pleasure of working with many, many organizations, both domestically and overseas, from small organizations to major brand name organizations. I've really yet to see the perfect data center. So we all share certain challenges. Keeping the environment that we've inherited, own, or responsible for up and available amongst a lot of challenges and complexity. And it's not getting any easier as we're moving through the 21st century. A housekeeping issue, we have a lot of materials to cover, and as indicated, you'll get a copy of the slides. So I will not be reading every slide. You will get copies. And I'll try and use simple, direct terms, as I expect we have a mix of IT professionals, some business continuity folks, some risk manager type folks, some auditors, etc. One common theme as you look on this thing, our agenda is we're going to look at some of the causes of downtime, some complexity issues, again, some warning signs, and then some quick fixes and some suggestions and maybe things to help you improve your environment. And one common theme throughout this, as you would anticipate, will be communications. Funny thing happens. If you attend like seminars like this, or you read an article, and you hear about someone else's outage or disruption, it's a lessons learned. When it happens to you, it's disaster and catastrophe. So we want to try and avoid that occurring to you. And that is sometimes a resume updating event, which we all wish to avoid. Okay. Give me one Second way, I'm transferring who has. This is our first poll, and it'll show up out there in the world. Who has a brand new data center being, immediate to a couple years old? Who's running a data center or server room that's maybe 5 years old, or 10 years old, or 15 years old? Or I would expect there's many of you that have data centers that are 20 and 20 plus years old. So take a few minutes and kind of click which of these choices is most appropriate to yourself. I'm going to minimize this and then keep moving on the presentation. Okay, the second poll that we're going to be able to take a look at, and I know I'm pushing you a little bit on time, will be, have you experienced an unplanned outage in the last 12 months or in the last year? Second one, have you had a scheduled outage, planned downtime for maintenance, upgrade, enhancements to your systems? And the third is, have you updated your business impact assessment or analysis or your risk assessment in that same period of time, let's say the last 12 months? Who has completed a limited recovery exercise? Not the entire full-blown production environment, but maybe you have to parse out components and pieces due to constraints that you might have. And finally, who has completed a comprehensive recovery exercise, really end-to-end for your technology, and maybe going as far to having business users, customers, and supply chain and external people involved in those activities. So be as candid as you can on these polls. Thank you. Okay, you will see twice in this presentation. I've become kind of fond of this, of an analysis done by Ponemon Institute. The name comes from Larry Ponemon out in Michigan, and he's been doing outages and downtime studies for several years now. It's got a very nice structure. There's a link at the end of this presentation, and there's some extracts. But what I like about it is he has a nice framework, and he also comes and revisits the issues to see how things have changed on a regular basis.
Hey,
so on this slide, yes?
Hey, so the results are in. I don't know if you want to talk to the first one that's up right now. If you go to your go-to screen for who has a data center.
Perfect. Let's take a quick look. Yep. Actually, that's kind of interesting when you look at it, folks. A brand new data center, that number has been going up, and I think it has to do to our hopefully recovering economy. Frequently, that number's in single digits. A lot of people have a 5-year-old, 10-year-old, et cetera, and when you kind of look, I would expect that about a third of us have a data center that's at least 20 years old, which is pretty consistent because it's a high-cost investment, takes a long lead time. Now there's another challenge. If you've got a data center that was built 20 years ago, it was probably not built for current purposes and technology. It was probably more of a design of a mainframe environment, more of raised floor and some of that traditional. Another issue is with this data center. That's not in your poll, but maybe write yourself a note. Pretty often, when I walk through and visit data centers, people show me magnificent facilities. And it often comes in where it's like, well, we purchased this from, they didn't build it, they didn't design it, we bought this from or acquired this from Acme Corporation or a big technology firm or multinational. And they're very proud of that. On the flip side, maybe something to consider is, why would that other firm release or sell this data center? Normally, if you've got something that's perfect or very high and reliable, you'd keep it and maybe get rid and call out and remove some less reliable data centers. So why did they get rid of it? Did they find some limitations in that data center? Interesting. How about our second poll? Do we have the next one up?
On the way.
Good. Unplanned outage. Yep, especially, and we'll talk about what some of those root causes were. That's about to be expected. Almost 2/3 of us have an unplanned outage. And clearly 2/3 of us have to do some scheduled maintenance and updates. And sometimes that first and second one are tightly aligned. You discover something from one or the other, and it creates either a planned or unplanned. I'm impressed that our people are keeping their research or data collection, BIA, and risk assessments up to date, about half. Excellent, congratulations. And again, a little more than half are doing a partial exercise. And finally, a full-blown exercise in the last year, about 1/3. And that's challenging not only from budget for planning or complexity, something to think about. Okay, let's get back on track here. Thank you so very much. Let me pop my screen over here. I started to talk about the Ponymon study. And on this, it's attached. I'd recommend you go ahead and download it and read. There's some great reading in here. But it's kind of expected that the cost of downtime, and it is a study, it's pretty well done, but those costs are rising significantly over a period of the last 5 or 6 years. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. One thing that's interesting about this study is what are the causes of these outages? This has changed over time. Right now, in the most recent study, amazingly enough, uninterruptible power supplies, or UPS failures, are reported as the #1 cause of an unplanned or unscheduled outage, being about 1/4, 25%. I did fail to put a number in there, so jot this down. At the cost estimates are about $709,000. Second bullet is cybercrime. Hacking and all its various manifestations is a huge growing concern. Where you can see back 5 or 6 years ago, it was about 2% of outages. Now it's huge. At least as reported, at least 1/4, and the cost impacts are approaching $1 million on average. Human error, we make mistakes. That's always one of the top causes of outages. What I thought was interesting is an IT equipment failure used to be a very high rate or a very high root cause of a problem. That's gone down significantly as our technology and manufacturers have hardened and armored up our equipment. But when it does go down, it is big money. Gartner also does some studies, and I'll just kind of highlight a couple of things here. And again, most of these will be in the attachments and references, and I'd encourage you to read those. Gartner's saying really 80% will be caused by people or process. We're human beings, we're limited, we're doing more with less, we're under pressure. Okay? And they're also saying half of those outages would be with change control or new releases or integrations or handoff issues, which I find very interesting because the intent of that is to avoid those issues. Let me see. We're having a slowness here for 1 second while I click down. We're locking up here. Do you want to take over and go to the next screen for me, please, Jess?
Sure.
There you go. Thank you. Okay, Gartner and their study, they highlight several items. There's a couple, 3, okay, and I'll talk about these later. I've been a fanatic over the last 3 decades of using standards and the value of this. Also, the second item is how well is IT services and procedures, how well are they documented and how well are they tracked? That's a challenge in a lot of technical environments, documentation being up to date. It's not sexy, it's not fun. You're being pressed by other issues. And also it's not in the sweet spot in the skill sets of a lot of technicians. Finally, the idea of how much business risk is the overall organization willing to tolerate. And that's been emphasized by many of the ISO standards and a lot of the risk standards over the last couple of years, defining your risk appetite and tolerance. Next screen, please. Okay, Dun & Bradstreet has done some work. And again, there's all kinds of research. I just want to move through these quickly. What they're saying, a pretty good percentage of the Fortune 500 will experience a minimum of downtime, about 1.6 hours per week, whether that's a variety of causes. So you can take a look at some of that, and this is out of Business Computing World UK study. Next slide, please. Okay. Another challenges we all face, besides just keeping the lights on and keeping production running and keeping our end user connected, is with big data, huge data that we didn't historically have to deal with, whether it's structured or unstructured data. You're probably managing, simply said, more and more pictures internally of people at their various events and videos and training and presentations, huge amounts of data that are gobbling up a lot of resources. Also, the last several years, we've been dealing with, quote, the cloud, whether that's a hybrid cloud, disaster recovery as a service. There's many different flavors and permutations. You know, it might be infrastructure as a service or software as a service. Many, many cloud issues and benefits. Choosing what's right for us and what makes some sense. Finally, an ongoing problem at the same time as the cloud, and they're related, is being efficient, being green, having a low power utilization efficiency number, having PUEs that are down at 1.8 and trying to strive for 1.6. At the same time, we're facing challenges of competitive intelligence and how to manage our data more effectively, dealing with more analytics and dashboard, and of course, the next one ties to the first one also, social media, wikis and blogs and videos, the ways we now communicate. Can you hear me now? Also interesting, another challenge, when you talk to most IT managers and directors, they've spent a very high percentage of their time over the last several years dealing with audits and compliance issues versus improving and enhancing their environment. Also, last year, in the last 12 months, and even beyond, as you see in the media, information security, cybersecurity, data security, hacking, ethical hacking has become huge. Then we have the other items, which is just keeping our customers happy, managing to a budget, managing with limited resources, time, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, just some examples for some of the non-technical. I just kind of threw this in here. How much is a lot of data? And you can search out on YouTube. I'd recommend you look. There was on YouTube, What Happens in an Internet Minute was put up. And I didn't cite this in the materials, but it was by Intel, I believe. And it just shows you the speed at which we are moving and managing data as globally. And that's about 1.5 years old, so it's growing exponentially. Next slide, please. Another challenge we have is getting more and more complex environment. Go ahead, click all the way through these. On how we're managing our current technology. That has changed over time, and there's different workload characteristics and cost and complexity that are associated with all of these multiple levels. Many people have a 3-tier level. Okay, next slide. Just it's another issue in complexity. In the old days, we used to say we were a big blue shop. Now you have tastes and flavors of just about everything that you're managing or exposed to. Just some logos here. Next slide, please. Okay, another question. We talked about downtime. Is it all the same? I would contest. In here, when we talk about downtime amongst our technician, business continuity, IT, and availability and risk people, unplanned downtime is an outage. That's a whoopsie. We talked about that scheduled downtime. We need to maintain, upgrade, change, and do regular maintenance on our old systems, especially if they're 10, 15, 20, 20 plus years old. I'd contend that we're splitting the hair, and we can discuss and explain it. Downtime is downtime to the customer and the end user. They don't care. If the system is not available that they plan to use in the applications, it impacts them. Next slide. It would be surprising, and this comes out of that UK study that I'd mentioned, a huge amount of that unavailability is a result of us planning for downtime to do maintenance or take systems offline or to upgrade, a regular portion of our responsibility. That's 90% based on some industry study. Whereas unplanned downtime, the Oopsie, only accounts for 10%. But because it's unplanned and the nature of that, as we've seen in the Ponyman studies, etc., high impact, okay, because it's in many cases an unmanaged risk. Just when you think about things and discuss this with your colleagues inside, maybe differentiate and speak plain English terms versus jargon and acronyms. Let's move to the next slide. Okay. A couple of warning signs for you to consider. So you've got a data center or server room, whether it's brand new or up to 20 plus years old or built in the 80s or 90s. First off, are there building codes? And are they enforced? If you're in a developed nation, like we have the pleasure of being in, that's a benefit. If you're in a developing nation, they probably don't have that capability or don't understand it. When you walk through your data centers and server rooms, are you using the old approach of 20, 30 years ago where your air conditioning units or your air handling units are right up on the raised flare? That's not the most efficient and best practice. Are you doing regular cleaning? Are you tracking vibration? We've mentioned UPS issues, and the issues go on and on. A few things that you look about, what are the architectural elements? You know, what kind of wall materials are used? Are they drywall and metal studs? Or is it masonry construction? Or is it tilt up or heavier construction? Are you using raised floors or not? A good source there is TIA 942, which is the Telecommunication Industry Association. They have got a great standard number 942 that is pretty specific to commercial facilities and wiring data centers. Another thing to look at, access to the data center. Are you really proud of your data center and you take your customers and give them a tour? Do you still have people that have their work area that are working in the critical environments? It's a machine room and an equipment room. It's not a work area. Do things get unpacked? Do you see any combustibles? Are there service personnel that are coming in too, from the previous bullets, service and work on those air conditioning units and UPS and fire protection items, electrical panels, etc. Just because you put them in the wrong place, now you've compounded the issue because it needs to be serviced. Next slide. Okay. Then there's always location-based hazards, especially if you only have a single data center or you're constricted by your footprint of your operation. So it's something to take a look at. I just kind of put in there lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So there's all kinds of natural hazards as we see on a regular basis, whether it's weather or superstorm, Sandy or lightning or tornado or brush fires or freezing or drought, typhoons, etc. The list goes on and on. Then there's also those man-made hazards that we all fight and struggle and try and identify, whether that's violence in the workplace, whether it's terrorism, whether it's things beyond our control that happen in the community and impact us. And it's not a comprehensive list, but I'm sure most of you have at least, if you've done those risk assessments and BIAs, you've looked at this, if not more, items. Next slide, please. Proximity. Why don't you go ahead and click through, because I've got a little animation on this. In that circle in the center is a big data center. On the location, yeah, there you go. So in this case was a customer, I'm saying, is this one of your requirements for must-have for site selection? You need to be within a few hundred yards of salt water and only a few feet above sea level in a storm surge area. Better have some good tank farms. on all sides of you, be isolated, better have some power plants, all those risks we talk about. So taking a look, and it's easier to do these proximity and risk assessments now than it has been in the past. So just a lighter tone in there. Yep, pick a good spot. Next slide, please. Okay, looking at buildings, the actual physical structure. Do you own those? Are you thinking about buying them? Are you going to rent? Are you going to design build? Are you going to co-lose it? Are you going to use some kind of cloud? And there's all kinds of considerations that bring into all kinds of different engineering disciplines here to help you make not only an assessment of what you have currently, but what options you might want to look at in the future. What does all this go to? Total cost of ownership, not just to build and stand up the data center, but total cost through the lifetime of a data center or a server room. This allows you to at least do some reasonable cost-benefit evaluation when you're talking the financial numbers with management in your organization. It's very difficult to get exact numbers, but you can get some ranges. And again, you can read some of this, and they're readily available in many sources. Next slide, please. Causes. We looked, Ponyman did some studies, there's some other story. Human error. Okay. Think about your own folks. Are you staffed enough? Do you have open positions? One challenge that we all face, and I'm not sure what's wrong with us as organizations, when revenue is strong, it's easy to do all these fixes. When revenue has a downturn and money is a little bit tight, they cut off several things right away as a pattern. First off, no travel. Reach out and talk to them on a telephone. Second off, no training. We don't need to spend that money. Oh, and then reduction, no replacement enforcing. Let's lock up. You can't replace those people until later, so you might be running short staff. So now you're compounding, and people make mistakes without training, without capabilities, without standards, and if you don't define expectations for them, they're going to do their best efforts, and sometimes that will not work out with the result that you desire. Power quality issues are huge, so talk to your electrical engineers, especially in the United States when we run certain voltages versus other countries that run the higher voltages. Design and operations, the third bullet. When you look, all data centers will eventually have an outage or a problem, even if it's a tier 3 or tier 4 as defined by uptime or TIA, things break. In many cases, then you blame the design, saying this was poorly designed. That might not be the case. Most designs, engineering designs, are fine. However, something got lost in translation for how you operate and maintain that facilities, and changes that you made that maybe compromised the design, whether that's intended or unintended because of lack of understanding, or deferring your maintenance, or things reaching their end of life. Things break in the mechanical areas. Also environmental issues. Those kind of go with the greening issues when you talk about, quote, free cooling or cooling with outside air. Then you're introducing potential pollution issues where you're sucking in straight outside air to cool your data center, or you have to do additional money and time on filtering and contamination. And then a lot of these environmental challenges cause outages. Next slide, please. So that gets into deeper engineering. And just click through these couple. I'm just having a little fun. So with cabling standards, I'm sure you all have the best way where you manage cables. Okay. So we've just touched on a couple of different issues and challenges that we all face. And again, touching some engineering disciplines, some practices, and some technicals. So here's some ideas and suggestions and maybe approaches that can help you as we continue to have more technology embedded in our organization. Next slide, please. Get some help. I don't know how many IT folks, I call them ICT as most information and communications technologies, they stand up and they become experts. Now, I'll go back to that very first polling that we did. If you've been and you're maintaining a data center that's been there for 20 years, it's highly unlikely that you were the key project manager to bring that data center up to date at that time. So if you say we're an expert, we can keep the data center running, you have everything working against you. So just read this. If you put yourself up as an expert and you've got everything covered, I didn't say it's your fault. I will say I'm going to blame you, which is significantly different. And as I mentioned in the opening, this could be a big issue, a resume updating event. So get some help within the organization. Next slide. Okay, back to the poll. Next slide. Suggestions and strategies. The data center and the server room are a critical environment. It's owned by the company. The care and feeding is done by your technical staff. So engage top management. Timing's appropriate. That's all. I mean, a day does not go by where you don't hear about problems that occur in the workplace, whether it's violence, disruption, outages, or hacking. Make sure you engage the business. When I saw earlier the poll that you're doing BIAs and you're doing risk assessment and testing, that's excellent. But make sure you're not standing alone on an island, that engaging the business, that there's a clear understanding of what they need, and it's the right thing. It's not holiday gift-giving time. And then those services that you provide. Usually that's accomplished for you folks. You use some kind of a steering or oversight committee, which is representative of the broader organization, so you get a balance of opinions, and you can, again, discuss priorities. Make sure you update those BIAs and risk assessments for those of you that have not done it. Use a standard-based approach, and these are just some standards out there. The United States specifically, we're very late on adopting standards. The rest of the world adopts standards much quicker. I don't know if it's a cultural issue or if we decide, yeah, we'll figure it out. We know quite, we're a superpower, we'll get this all figured. Part of the benefits of standards, next slide, is standards. You don't have to create your own best practices. You can leverage experience from other like-minded professionals. Many of them are pretty intelligent who have been there and done that and have some lessons learned. So you don't have to align to one particular standard. You can mix and match and choose which elements of these standards, good practices, guidelines, etc., that fit to your needs, and then use those. So align to some standards. That doesn't mean that you have to hang a plaque on the wall or get certified, but use those as guidance. Again, doing backups are fine. As you probably know from your testing, restores are at least a minimum. Testing is critical. And again, highlighting again, having a plan, align with the business. Find those folks. Who is doing your business continuity management? What are they calling themselves? Who is doing risk management? What are they calling themselves? Are they being called enterprise resilience, corporate resilience? Is it compliance? Do you have some internal auditors? Those groups in themselves all have a common shared objective, which is protecting the organization. Strike some alliances and bring them in and engage them. Finally, the traditional BIA and risk assessment many times falls short because it is more for the professional conducting the BIA and putting together pretty charts and graphs. Make sure that the business understands short and concise why you're doing this. Next slide, please. So customized. Review your locations. I'm not saying that a 2017 imperative is to move your data center, but at least begin that educational awareness and keep that information in front of the decision makers of your organization that you have some risk. Take a look at your processes. Maybe that's where you work with compliance and internal controls. What kind of processes? Who control those? Are they up to date? How is your documentation? Is it secure? Is it adequate? What do you get rid of? Are you training your people? Or are you taking the concept that if we train our people, then they'll get upgraded and run across the street and get a better job? So the message you're sending there is you only hire at the lowest level, you keep them ill-informed, and trying to change your objectives. So make sure that you're caring for your people. Watch the little things, especially in the technical environment. Here's some of the soft skills. There's many different analogies. Take care of the little things and the small fixes that you can look at each day. Leverage any kind of project management and change control or tab boards that you have. And again, we've said engage the business. Finally, KYP. If you're on a team or a team leader, if you've been there for any time, know your personnel. You know, not everybody's perfect. They have their strengths and their limitations. They have their own unique perspectives and characteristics and talents, which is what makes this whole life very interesting. But know your personnel, so don't assign somebody to something where they will fail, wherever possible. Next slide, please. Organization approach. I've touched on this a couple of times. This goes with communication. Leverage other departments, units in your organizational areas. I put it in a couple of times. Risk, information assurance, business continuity, audit, environmental health and safety, security, insurance, etc. Okay? Then it's a corporate or organizational undertaking. Can you hire it done? Wonderful. If you've got the talent, time, and resources, maybe you want to engage some experts to help you with that or hire some consultants. Do it yourself, DIY. I think that was an old Peter Gabriel tune from many years ago. Do it yourself. And what are the trade-offs if you're doing some of these approaches, what is not getting done? Make sure also that you can document and get some help from other areas, taking a look at what the impacts of the disruption are versus the benefits of the potential fix. Document, 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 document. Next slide. A tidy shop is a happy shop. Walk through your data center, walk through your critical environment, or for that matter, all of your office space. White glove test. When is the last time that you had a specialty cleaner that went through and cleaned everything under the raised floor, if you have raised floor, in the cabinets or in the enclosures, above the raised floor, in the ductwork, through all the filters? Keep a clean facility. All of that dirt is working against you, especially most of your facilities are cooled through the air or convection cooling, which means you're moving all of that dirt and contamination from under the floor, up through the raised floor panels, and then right across all the close tolerances of your equipment. I'd mentioned earlier, if you're going to do a project, IT people have a great amount of skills. Many times that's not technical writing. They're more comfortable with doing other skills. If you can hire one technical writer, then have your teams give them the information, and then you get a consistent format. It's a very good investment. They get you a nice structure where it's readable, usable, and retainable, and written at the appropriate level. Train your people. Down below, NOAA. Every culture around the culture has a great flood story. The concept of NOAA is he had to get all of the animals 2 by 2 in for reliability, high availability, and sustainability. Now, if NOAA can figure out to get them in 2 by 2, there's a message there. No one should ever be alone in your data center. An employee with a visitor, an employee with a technician, an employee with a guest. If someone is coming in to install, he's one of your rack technicians, maybe you should be in there with an electrician. Always 2 by 2. Clearly define your expectations. Procedures, what to do, most importantly, what not to do. Really, in many cases, that gets down to writing things at almost a 5th grade level. And what I've had great success with when my kids were younger growing up, if I would write a procedure or a report, I'd give them $1 to read the report. 4th or 5th grade, hey, mark up anything you don't understand. And then you can write it at that clarity level. So define expectations. Okay? Manage and monitoring. There's all kinds of moving parts in different environmentals. It's almost impossible without monitoring or DSIM or management systems to be able to keep a track of these. So take a look at some automation and what it can do for you to manage so you don't have a creeping disaster. You can respond immediately. It's money well invested. Next slide. Take readings. Monitor the environment. No one can predict the future, but if you have some trending, you can do, if you have some data points, you can do some trending and be able to forecast a little bit. So as your people are taking the tours, give them specific activities to do to help you monitor the critical elements of your environment. Take readings, any changes or any readings that you see that are outside of the norm, make sure that it gets integrated with your change advisory or a change control. Third bullet for your more technicians, any kind of copper communication cabling. Keep that away from power sources, big cables or transformers, because they are very much prone to electromagnetic problems or power quality. Everybody's walking around with a handheld device. So keep those handheld devices, whether they're tablets, phones, etc., whatever you're using, keep that away from your processing equipment. Electronic data processing, MIS equipment, the stuff that's racked in your environment. Next slide. Okay. Define and enforce the policies and procedures. You can't have consequences until you've told people what you expect of them. Make sure that it's enforced. There should never be an emergency delivery. So that means no unpacking and slapping something in a data center, waiting for a vendor or a special colored truck to drive up and you slap it right into the production environment. You should have spares that are in a test lab that get a chance to condition. So if you're unpacking inside the data center, you're compounding the problem. No food or drinks, people if possible in the data center. There's no rush, so avoid rushing, running, moving too quickly and making those mistakes. Take your time. There's the old saying for you handymen, measure twice, measure a third time, cut once. Make sure anybody that's visiting your contractors that you do a little bit of check that they know what they're doing on their specifications and their capabilities. Use those walk-off mats that get all the garbage off of your shoes where you've walked through the parking lot in between. That's something with the American culture too, where you go from home out to your vehicle, get on a train, walk across the parking lot, and then you walk right into the office or the data center. In other cultures, you would not dream about bringing your shoes into a house. Anti-static procedures, use those. Next slide. These are cheap and effective ways to mitigate. Other suggestions. Communication is a theme. Nobody's perfect. Communicate with your team. If you don't define your expectations, they'll make them up. When they make it up, it leads to a little bit of heartache. Yeah, leverage your vendors. Find out what they've got in development and pipeline. What is the environment going to look like next year or 2018 or 2020? How else can you begin to prepare to adjust and plan for your environment and capacity management? It's okay to talk to people. Go outside of your comfort zone and ask, what if? How about if we do this? Like you're doing here, attend webinars, gather information, attend conferences. We are moving so quickly in the 21st century that by making a commitment to your professional improvement, at least slows down the rate at which you're falling behind. Look for different alternatives. Next slide. Okay. I've included some references here. And again, on a few different things, and this will be sent out to you. At this point, if there are no questions, I will kick it over to my colleague, Vincent. Thank you, everyone.
Great, thank you, Jim. And just as a reminder, if you do have any questions, feel free to submit them in the questions panel, and we'll get back to, we'll go through them after Vincent. Okay,
Thank you, Jim, so much for this great insight into the problems that can happen in the data center and all the best practices, suggestions, and ideas that you shared with us was great. Just a quick check, Jesse, can you see my screen? Yep, good. So I think we all agree that we never want things to go bad in the data center, but as we all know, and this happens from time to time, things can really go bad. And this is what I want to talk about now. I'm going to talk about how to respond to data center disasters when they happen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the things that you need to do when major incidents happen, and even more importantly, even before they actually happen. So just like Jim did, I am going to refer to this Ponemon Institute study that lists the major root causes of unplanned outages. And what we see here is that they are of different natures. We see they can be due to IT equipment failures, but also they can be man-made or due to natural disasters. But they all have a common point in common, and that is the impact on the business, the impact on your company's business operations. And when you read this report, you'll see that there's another chart which is very interesting, and that's the cost to the business of those unplanned outages. And what I just did here, I just wanted to highlight that even if we only take the median price, or the median cost per minute, we're already talking about $7,000 per minute as the cost of an unplanned outage to the business. And this is what your business is going to be looking at. Now, on top of this, as you know, unplanned outage means for us in IT, unplanned work. That means things that we're going to have to work on which was not scheduled, was not planned. So this is also introducing disruption within the IT teams. So, so again, yeah, 7,000 per minute. So that's a number that we should all keep in mind. So what do we want to do? What should we do when those unplanned outages which are impacting the business happen? The first thing you want to do is to define what a major incident is in the context of your organization, in the context of your business. So get with the business and agree with the business what those major incidents are. And you can look at the definition of what a major incident is, and you'll find that it's going to be considered a major incident if it is a severe disruption to the service or even an interruption of the service, making the business application or the service unavailable. It has to be a large impact on the business. That means, for example, if it's a customer-facing service, it's going to impact a large number of customers. And the urgency to restore the service has to be high. That means the business will want to see a restoration of the service happen very quickly. So again, get with the business, identify the services and the applications which impact the business when they go down, and agree with them on what you are going to do when those events happen. So basically, have a plan. The second thing you want to do is to assess the business impact. For each business service, each mission-critical service, find out how long an application can be down before they start impacting the business. That's what we call here the maximum time available for repair, the MTAR, maximum time available for repair, as opposed to the MTTR, which is the end-to-end incident life cycle from detection to resolution. So what you want to do here is you want to be aware of the time that you've got to work on this issue. And that's going to also give you a sense of how fast is fast enough to resolve an issue. Some applications, with some applications, the business impact happens as soon as the issue is detected. Take, for instance, a e-commerce website. As soon as the website goes down, there's an impact on revenue because customers cannot place orders anymore, right? So giving this information in your plan will guide you in terms of assigning people and how fast you have to go. The next thing you want to do is you want to create a major incident response virtual team. That's going to be the team who's going to be responsible for responding to an incident. So based on the incident, you're going to put together this team, which is going to include members from different departments, different teams. Network engineering, you may need application support, you may need DB support, database support, a few people from the middleware team, server infrastructure. If you're running SAP, you may need someone from ERP support, and if you are running a hospital or running hospital operations, you may need someone from a few people from the EMR, the electronic medical record support team, and also include functional people like your service desk manager, people from customer service, because those people are going to be responsible for communicating to impacted customers. Change management should be part of the team, and maybe depending on the criticality of the application, maybe the IT service director should be also involved. And again, do not forget third-party vendors. Sometimes they should be part of the restoration call, the resolution process. Okay, and for this team, assign someone to be the major incident manager. We need to have a leader that's going to drive the process of getting the issue fixed. Now, because we know in those situations that everyone, including senior management and customers, can easily panic in the middle of a crisis, you need to have a communication strategy or a communication plan in place. And Jim talked about this as well. So you need to define, even before you're getting exposed to those issues, who will be contacted. Okay? So you're going to have to contact very quickly the IT experts, the people in the IT organization who are going to work on fixing the issue. You may want to also inform senior management, depending on the application. If it's an e-commerce application, you may want to contact the senior VP of sales at one point. And you may want to keep your impacted customers aware or informed, so they don't call into your help desk, they don't call into your service desk, and even create even more tickets. Now, for those different groups of people, what content will be communicated and to whom? So instead of crafting messages on the fly, have everything ready. Use notification templates. So when a network outage happens, the message is already created. It's just a matter of tweaking the information with the date and the duration and a few information. But the notification itself is already predefined. How are you going to be communicating with the different stakeholders and users and people here? Are you going to use emails for customers? What if emails are down? Are you going to use text, SMS, voice, text to voice? Are you really going to use emails for contacting your IT experts? As you know, if the emails won't reach out to them if they are away from their desk, if they are sleeping, if they are on vacation, and so on and so forth. So think about the channel for communication. Now, we need those IT experts on the conference bridge ASAP. What is going to be the escalation rule if they do not respond? Is it going to be a functional escalation? Is it going to be an escalation to management? These are the things that you need to define prior to the unplanned outage. Now, during the crisis, while everybody's on deck to working on fixing the issue, how often are you going to communicate with those group of people? And how are we going to keep up to date the contact information for all those individuals, for the IT personnel on call, for those groups of people that we want to send communication to? So these are the questions that you need to have answered before in your communication plan. Just as an example, this is a timeline of what happens during a cyber attack, which in this case led to a data breach. And you can see here the different stakeholders, and you can see that some are outside of the IT department. You may have the you will have the marketing department, the legal department, the executive team, your employees involved at one point. So notifications and communications will have to be sent to those different groups of people, including employees at one point, to let them know that they shouldn't use anymore the company's network. Next thing you need to do, you need to open at least 2 virtual crisis rooms for every major incident. You need at least 2 conference bridges open, one for your technical experts, the people who are going to be working on fixing the issue, and one for your senior management. Why 2? Because you don't want to have the business people ask business questions to your technical people. It's just going to create distraction, and again, IT experts should be focused on restoring the service ASAP. So at least 2 conference bridges. Why at least 2? Because you may need others for legal, for the business continuity people, for risk management. Provide collaboration tools. They should be all using the same tools, so collaboration is made easier. And a question you need to ask yourself and pre-define is, how are you going to contact your IT experts? Is it going to be done manually from someone at service desk or someone in the NOC, or do you envision sending a conference bridge invitation directly from your ticketing system? Should that be ServiceNow, BMC, Sherwell, or others, or directly from your monitoring tools or event management tools? Like if the website goes down and I know it's down, I want my web team aware. I want to inform my web team ASAP. So again, at least 2 conference bridges, one for IT, one for senior management. So as a recap, if we do a quick recap here, the things you need to do when something goes wrong in the data center and is impacting your business is get a definition of what a major incident is within your organization and agree on this definition with the business. Assess the business impact for each service so you know how much time you have before it becomes a business crisis. Put together a cross-functional virtual incident response team that's going to be working on restoring the service as soon as possible. Define a communication strategy and use predefined communication templates so that everyone stays calm and knows what they have to do. As I just said, open at least 2 conference bridges, one for your experts, one for management. And as you may know already, there are solutions out there in the market to help you deal with this major incident management process. And those solutions is Everbridge Alerting, which provides unlimited global voice and SMS, intelligent notification templates, on-call schedules and rotation, so we know who's available, automatic escalation in case IT experts don't respond to the notification, one-click conference call to get everybody on the same bridge in a matter of seconds, integration with ticketing systems and IT operation management tools so that notification can automatically be triggered, and the whole solution resides on a SaaS platform which shows best-in-class availability performance. With that, I'm going to hand it over back to Jesse.
Great. Thank you, Vincent, and thank you so much, Jim. I know we're running a little over time, but we have a few minutes to answer a few of the questions that came in. Can you advance? So it looks like the first one that comes in is for you, Jim. And the question is, are UPS outages usually due to lack of maintenance or upkeep of the system?
Yes and yes. It can also be a misunderstanding if you have multiple UPSs. Many times in a bigger environment, you'll have 3. You don't have it properly load balanced. And then basically, if one goes offline, which is designed to happen in engineering, but if the load is too much on it and you've got too much on a phase, you'll drop that phase or potentially that entire UPS. So operationalizing that. So what does that mean in an environment? If you got one UPS in a small environment, you can probably take it up to about 80% of its rated capacity in kilowatts. If you have multiple UPSs, you can't get that high. You can only go to 35 or 40%. So machine 1 fails over to the second machine to carry the load. So that basic misunderstanding also creates a lot of problems. There's also the other issue is dealing with batteries. Batteries are a real challenge depending on the type and the location and where they're put in. Yes, and the UPS has gotten pretty complex, basically. I would, if you're having a problem getting an electrical engineer that works all the time with UPSs in critical environments, that's a specialty, not wiring up the local hotel or parking lights or something. It's a different discipline altogether. Next, back to you, Jesse.
Great, thanks, Jim. We have another one comes in, I believe this one is for you as well, and it says, we use the same vendor for both hardwired and wireless internet connectivity. IT says it's fine as it's different infrastructure, but from a business continuity perspective, it's a single vendor dependency risk. What are your thoughts or recommendation when it comes to internet connectivity disaster recovery?
You know, I take a look and have a discussion and sit down. I don't get that worried about a single vendor unless it's, you can choose to sole source. If they're the only ones available, that's one issue, to do both infrastructures. So take a look at their staffing and skill set and depth chart in case you have a problem. Can they respond to you as you expect, or might they be split to other customers? Finally, there's nothing wrong with maybe carving out a little bit of that work, a project or two, to a secondary vendor where they can do a small percentage and see what benefit that makes. I always tried to have at least 2 electricians or electrical firms in the house, and the same for all the mechanical disciplines at all times. You know, keep folks honest. Back over to you, Jesse.
Great, thanks. I think we have time, if you don't mind, Jim, for one more question. If we have to run, we can cut it short. But the question is, how do the data center issues vary by whether you run the DC or outsource, also where located onshore versus globally hosted?
Well, I can be old school sometimes. If it's internal, then your employees have maybe a higher interest and stake because it is their employment, it is their job security, it is their retirement. If you've outsourced, somewhere in the past, did some of your employees shift over to that outsource firm so they're badged differently? Most of the big vendors, they're very good. They'll do a nice job for you. Very rarely have I found a problem with vendors because they want you to be successful. Offshoring, onshoring, that gets into time zones, distancy. If it's production, maybe you have things that are latency sensitive or less latency sensitive. In other words, affected by the distance and performance. So that should all be part of not only your selection process, but your ongoing management, and should be part of your either service level agreements or operational level agreements that they can hit those numbers. And it's two-sided. You want anybody as a contractor, supplier, or vendor, they want you to be successful so you can pay your bills, and you want them to be successful so you can stay in business. So building a healthy relationship is the best way to approach that, and that includes identifying any unrealistic expectations. And that's tough conversations to have, but they're meaningful over time. Back to you, Jesse.
Great, and I think that's all the questions we have. I know we're a little bit over time. So thank you so much, Jim, for this really informative webinar. Really appreciate it, and thank you, Vincent, for your insights as well. And to all of our attendees who visited, thank you for joining us today. As I had mentioned at the beginning, we will be sending out the recording and the slides as well, although you can download the slides from the handout panel over here. And if we didn't get to your question, we apologize. We will try to get back to you via email. So thank you, everyone, again, for joining us, and thank you, Jim and Vincent. Thank you.
Good day. Thank you.